better roll them dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you're neither wrong or right. You never know if you don't roll them dice. You better roll them
Rob,
dice.
a mystery is afoot.
Is it? How many levels of cozy are you on, Matt?
Let's see. I have 2 beverages in front of me.
That's pretty cozy.
I legit did some gardening today, so I am high level of cozy. I'm ready to confront the horrors of the children of Persephone.
I'm glad to hear it, because this is Dungeon Master of None, and we are talking about Brindlewood Bay.
Yeah, Brindlewood Bay is a really interesting role-playing game from the Gauntlet Publishing and Jason Cordova. And it's interesting for like a million different reasons, but the first one that it's interesting for is you play cozy grandmas who
That's right.
solve mysteries.
Murder mavens who solve mysteries in a cozy seaside town. I'm surprised that we somehow have not talked about this yet, because Brindlewood Bay is a pretty popular indie RPG. It's made its rounds. It's a lot of people know it and like it, and for good reason, because it is really quite neat. We have been meaning to talk about this for a while.
We were waiting for me to get a couple sessions of the game under my
Oh, that's
belt.
right. Matt is actually
it's my fault.
You ran it, right?
Yeah, I've run a couple sessions. If you want to skip the rest of the episode and just look at it for yourself, it's pretty fun. If you like the vibe, it's great.
It has now spawned a series of related games.
And by inspired, I mean the same author has used the system for different settings.
Sorry, I'm trying to describe it in a way that, it's in the same way that Blades in the Dark is inspired by Forged in the Dark. Like, it's the same thing. It's just like a different setting with most of the same rules. And these games are called Carved from Brindlewood, so that they are the same thing.
Similar to Blades in the Dark, the reason Brindlewood Bay is interesting is it's a Powered by the Apocalypse game, but it's like different enough, like Blades in the Dark, that's really, it's kind of its own thing.
Yeah, it's Powered by the Apocalypse Plus. No, the game hinges on moves, and so that's going to be familiar if you know about Powered by the Apocalypse, but there are some other things that make it distinct. Some very strong themes and vibes that make this a very, very interesting and fun and compelling game.
The third thing that if you're going to tune out very quickly that you should know is that it takes a really unique approach to running a mystery, in that it's kind of sidestepped all together, in that you and your players kind of solve the mystery together. And by that, your players take a bunch of unconnected clues that's your job to provide and come up with their own solution. And there's still a chance they can fail and stuff, but it sidesteps the problem of guess the Agatha Christie novel I wrote in my mind.
Right. Yes. We have talked at length about how hard it is to run mysteries, even though we love to do it and it's fun. But Brindlewood Bay brilliantly avoids the issue entirely by just whatever explanation your players come up with, if it is compelling enough and they roll well, that's the mystery. They solved it. Matt was right to bring this up right now because it is kind of essential, but I was going to, wanted to talk about it at the end because, it is an open question whether or not that is as much fun as solving a mystery that is predetermined. But I think that in a TTRPG, it's a very smart idea because it's very difficult for your players to pick up what you're putting down if even if you think the mystery that you have created is quite easy to solve. It's
a real, cutting through the Gordian knot solution that I'm sure not everyone will like, but experience has shown me that, this works pretty well. And don't worry, listeners, we'll still get to the many mysteries that you kind of have to write as the dungeon master in Carved from Brindlewood games. But before we get to the theorized move and the benefits and the problems with it, I think the main thing that takes people to Brindlewood Bay is the theme and the vibes. From the art and the layout, it's very strong. This is a game inspired by cozy 80s TV shows, like the Hallmark, the Junkyard Mysteries, Murder, She Wrote.
Murder, She Wrote. Listen, I know that many people like a cozy book, a cozy show, a cozy feel these days. There is nothing cozier than Murder, She Wrote. Murder, She Wrote is the coziest television show that you can ever experience. Angela Lansbury solves mysteries at a very leisurely pace and narrates quite pleasantly, and it's extremely it's a soothing, cozy show, and those are the vibes of Brindlewood Bay.
It's doubly great because like the mysteries where like the plot only moves forward at like an inch pace and character development is like one arc per season are still popular to this day, right? You know,
Extremely.
I love me a Diagnosis Murderer or a Rizzolian Isles, you know, just real Bones, for example. Like
Bones is exactly what I was thinking of. Nothing happens in Bones.
Nope.
It's just like your favorite people are on TV, and look, there's a body, and it's like that for 800 episodes.
It's Emily Deschanel and the guy
me.
from Angel. Yeah.
David
Angel,
Boreanaz.
I think his name
and
it's David Boreanaz, Rob.
And
isn't
look,
he comforting?
Isn't it nice to look at them on screen? Yes, it's
there might be like a moment of intense action, which there will be in this game too. But yeah, so I think our point is like,
but everyone's gonna be fine. Yeah,
serial mystery TV shows are already cozy in and of themselves, and then we slap the additional layer of all of your characters are in the like golden years of their lives, the second stage of their life. They've all had a partner, you know, who's sort of moved on, died, or something like that, and they're retired more or less here in a real great place for a cozy story, not, you know, Martha's Vineyard, not Nantucket Island place in New England.
So if case is not clear, you will get a lot more out of this game if you are even passingly familiar with the mystery television or movie genre, because a sleepy seaside coastal town is so common for mystery shows to the that is the point of like a cliche. It's a funny joke to make about like you know,
everyone in New England is a murderer.
That's right. Everyone is harboring a dark secret, and the thing is that's because it works. It also I think like American TV inherited this from like British TV, where it is extremely common for there to be a drunken DCI who has to solve a problem in some decaying fishing village on the eastern side of England. And it's great. It's a great setting. And yeah, they're in, not Nantucket. And like not Nantucket, it is, or like actual Nantucket, it's full of dark secrets and old mysteries and strange ancient buildings and families with ties to things that are best left unsaid, so on and so forth.
Okay, so you're getting to the second
I'm jumping ahead.
of Brindlewood Bay, which is not just cozy, it's also dark, right?
Yeah.
So every session you solve a murder, right? Just like an episode of a TV show. And this is the part that, you know, your players come up with the solution to. You, as the dungeon master, have to slowly build a season-long arc, as these murders have some tangential or very like direct links to an eldritch Cthulhu like conspiracy, as the maidens of the fragrant void attempt to basically summon a great old one.
The murder mavens, your characters, that is their canonical group name. They meet to discuss the mystery books written by Amanda Delacourt.
The Gold Crown Mysteries. We love
Gold Crown
them.
Mysteries. And what's great about this is, like I said, the more familiar you are with just the mystery as a genre, the more fun you will have, I believe. But you as the players and the mavens are familiar with mysteries and their tropes and sort of like how they function. And so
that's what makes you such great detectives.
It's meant to be lampshaded, right? Like you are sort of like, you know, winking and nodding at like all these various like obvious mystery things that happen while you're solving a mystery. It's fun. It's very like, it's like tongue in cheek. It's a teensy bit meta. It's self-aware. It's, you know, you should be having fun with it while an evil cult is trying to kill you and summon in a great old one. That's what makes it, you know, a delight.
It lets you go from cozy to actually like solving a murder mystery, even though we know in real life murders are not cozy, right?
And very rarely solved.
Especially not by the police, which is a thing you can do in your game. The police are here to be incompetent and get in your way.
Yeah.
Contrasting the thing we've learned from TV, murders are cozy, with actually, here's the real scary thing, which is these murders are linked to a larger plot to open the gate in the box, or, summon another child of Persephone into our reality and destroy the world, which, this is the fun part you get to write as a DM. I will say these two themes, right, layering them on top of each other, is like, if it was just Murder, She Wrote, the role-playing game, or Golden Girls meets the murders, it's not enough, right? But layered together, it really creates a perfect role-playing game sandwich. And I have never, at a convention or with my own group of friends, had an easier time selling a role-playing game than this one. I said, hey, it's the Golden Girls where you solve mysteries and there's something dark going on. It's cozy and funny. People are on board immediately.
And like a regular mystery show, you've got your episodic murders that have to be solved, and then there's the meta plot, the serial killer that they roll out for every season of Dexter, or but like day to day you're solving like little mysteries, but the larger ones are building. And like Matt said, it's an easy sell, right? It's you're these old ladies, Golden Girls, who are nosy and solve murders.
Let's talk about actually how the game works, right? The moves and mechanics that help you tell this story. It is powered by the Apocalypse, so all rolls are 2d6 with our varied failure, success with consequences, straight success, or critical success mechanics, which mean different things with different moves. You've got like kind of 2 danger moves, and these are elegantly split between the night and day move. These are whenever you call for a roll for your Maven to accomplish something that is in doubt, you make a day or a night move. This could be escaping from like someone who's trying to stop the Maven, getting in somewhere a Maven's not supposed to be, etc., etc. The fun thing about these moves is you as the game master get to offload some of the work that is normally required in Powered by the Apocalypse. When a player makes a move, you say you're trying to break into the yacht where the victim's body is. You say, okay, what's your approach, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that sounds good. This sounds like a composure check. What are you afraid is going to happen if you fail? And if it's the day move, you can usually just kind of go with what they tell you. And if it's the night move, if this is happening at night, you get to tell them how things are worse than they suspected they would be. And so, boom, you've got the consequences set up before the roll happens. Easy peasy.
It's very easy to understand and implement this, right? It's all laid out before you. It's more dangerous at night. The general function is the same. Your players should be able to, sort of like meet you halfway and make it happen. But there's the day and the night move are going to be the majority.
Those are your bread and butter.
Yeah, exactly what you're doing. There's also I love this one, a meddling move where you exactly what it sounds like. You meddle.
Just a couple points on the meddling move. Advice if you're running this for the first time, right, is you've got to find the right balance for like you as the game master saying, it sounds like you really want to find a clue, versus the players being like, I'm going to meddle and find a clue. Both work. Hopefully by the halfway through your first session, you'll get to the point where players in the natural conversation of interviewing suspects, poking around things, are being like, I'm poking around here specifically to find a clue. And you can say, okay, perfect. Make your clue row. This sounds like a vitality check.
That's important. The meddling move is when you're specifically trying to uncover something and probably find a clue. You might find clues other ways, but the meddling move is when I want to find a clue, and you have a reason for that to happen.
Now, wait, we need to also pause on the meddling move, because as, since we're all dungeon masters here, you're probably wondering, well, how does this whole thing work, right? How do you solve a mystery where you don't have a set outcome in mind, where your players are kind of coming up with it? And the first thing is, every adventure in the published book, and the ones you might write yourself, give you a list of like 20 generic clues, right? That you've got to figure out. Your job as the DM at the table is to take things like stock certificates in a strange hiding place, or an attempt to collect a debt, or an antique vase, a family heirloom, shattered, and work them into naturally where the players find them or what they're looking for. And you all have this list in front of you so you can pick it up. And you don't want to give too much more information than that, because you don't want to say who the stock certificates belong to, or, which family this heirloom was, because later on in the adventure, your players are going to have to stitch these clues together into a narrative to solve the crime.
Yeah, and I like this, and I think this is a really interesting approach, because you as the GM are still given a lot of autonomy and to present the clues but you also are able to leave enough, you're encouraged to leave enough space for your players to sort of like draw their own conclusions and help you sort of like make those final connections. And this is something that I've not run Brindlewood Bay yet, but I am thinking about incorporating this into some of my other games, because it is hard. Your players will jump to conclusions, and Brindlewood Bay, like Matt said, cuts through that Gordian knot, and like whatever conclusion they jump to is the right conclusion. Go for it. Good. And this gives
and
you,
it can even mechanically reward them for jumping to better conclusions or worse conclusions. We'll talk about it in a second.
And you still get to tell a story. You still get to sort of like create the conspiracy. You're just doing it on a little bit more of a collaborative and dynamic basis.
This can be frustrating, this clue thing, for first-time players if you're approaching things as a traditional mystery. And you better lay out like how the actual mechanics of the game work the first time you play. You better say, I'm providing clues. The clues can be interpreted in a number of ways, some of them in more ways than others. It kind of depends on the context. But at the end, you've got to weave these through in a narrative. So your job is to speculate wildly and to search in many different places. Because if you're playing it like a real mystery, like real detectives, you find one clue, you're like, well, we should search where these stock certificates came from and who owned them. And it doesn't really work like that, right? You're supposed to solve the mystery like a fictional detective would. Continue to stumble around and uncover more unrelated things that can finally be pieced together. And your players better be aware of this, or you're going to have a bad time.
And next time you watch a mystery movie or TV show, notice how the protagonists just kind of stumble across things that are connected and draw wild conclusions that turn out to be true. This frustrates me all of the time. I'm like, how did you come to that conclusion? And then it turns out to be right. I'm often bewildered, but like this
in TV and movies, there's no way you could have guessed that, right?
Yes, that's right.
What this game has done is it's leaned into that idea of, well, there's no way you could have guessed it from until the very end. And so we're just accepting that reality.
Yeah, you're encouraged to let go and let the narrative just see where it takes you. And that is going to take some adjustment, but I think it's fun, and it is easier to run than a mystery with predetermined outcomes.
I will say this frees you up during play as the DM to devote your brain space into making the like events and complications tricky. Oh no, this person's arrived. Uh-oh, the sheriff's here. Uh-oh, someone's trying to get away. This person being really funny or interesting, or this place being just a place that it gives you the space to make the world a place your players want to stumble around and have their retirees, confront the biker gang or something like that.
If you can get your players to work with you and buy in and collaborate, then this will be a lot easier for you as a GM. It does require player buy-in and collaboration, and I think that is easy to get, and I think the game makes it easy for them to do that. It can, like Matt said, free you up, but only if you are, people are meeting you halfway.
So we talked about the 3 main moves your players will take, which is one, just a regular action roll, which could be not as risky or very risky, find a clue move, and then there's 4 other less common moves. The first is a cozy move, which lets players engage in one of their cozy activities, which you'll have marked on your character sheet, to clear conditions. What are conditions? Well, anytime they fail or fail with consequences or just when the story calls it, you as the game master, you have to be handing these out like candy, not only to raise the stakes, but because the players have like a lot of tools to ignore them. And it also, like, yeah, they have no other reason to do their cozy stuff unless you start hurting them with conditions, which could be things like you got a little shaken up, or you're not as sure as yourself, or it could, be simple words like sprained ankle or terrified or something.
It's not as straightforward as a broken leg or, psychological trauma. It can be as, you had an annoying conversation with a clerk and now
you're peeved.
Now you're cranky. Like that is a condition that like might affect your Maven. It could also be something serious, but any negative consequence can result in a condition that could be mild to extreme.
And then there's two other less common moves. The Gold Crown Mystery move, which is a once per session where you can basically succeed on whatever's happening by giving the name of a Amanda Delacour novel to the whole group, and you're all encouraged to contribute and explain how this is just how Amanda in her mystery overcame something, and a role for when you encounter the supernatural, the dark, the occult move.
Yeah, the Gold Crown Mysteries is fun because you have to name the book, but you're not allowed to repeat them. So you have to, your players need to be good.
You have a running list. It's pretty great.
Coming up with the names of mystery novels. Yeah, and then the occult move may not come up until late in your Maven's careers, but they get to do spooky magic, maybe, if the situation calls for it.
A similar move that you can do as the Dungeon Master to the Amanda Delacour Gold Crown Mystery moves, which is to cut to commercial. And I recommend, after running this a couple times, never do this more than once a session. And it's perfect for when you take a break in real life, as you say, right before the outcome is resolved, we say, we're going to cut to commercial. If the person rolling, who's about to roll this move, if you can come up with a fake 80s TV commercial and you give them a prompt or two, when we come back and narrate what watching that commercial is like, you get a automatic success. Yeah,
I love this. And I love that it is deliberate about how you should think of this game and how you should structure it. And a lot of our TTRPGs come from they're trying to model different narrative experiences. And you are being encouraged to think of this as a cozy television show with the murder mavens, and you're solving it. And I honestly think this is the experience of being high and watching a rerun from the 80s or a tape on your couch, right? It's like you're giggling at something. Watch a commercial from the National Honeydew Council. Yeah.
Hilarious. What a weird time the 90s or 80s.
What a strange time they were. A lot of your players, I think, are going to have an easier time of this than trying to construct a epic narrative fantasy adventure, because even if they are fans, they've probably seen a lot more TV mysteries than they have read gigantic fantasy novels. Yes. Even among our crowd, I think it is common that people are more familiar with the tropes and themes and I guess like narrative beats of a like an X-Files episode than the Adventures of Grey Mouse or whatever.
Yeah, it's yes, people are more familiar with Angela Lansbury.
This is not a criticism. This is not me. This is not Fofford. That's right. This is not me being like, kids these days. It's just like, I don't know. I've probably seen, I don't even like mysteries that much. I've probably seen more than I have read epic fantasy books,
I've seen more episodes of Remington Steele than I have Lankmar books, it's fine. The last move, and now we can, I think, complete how the mysteries work, is the theorize move, right? And so this is like conveniently at the end of the session. Like when you're about 20 minutes from wrapping up, you say, all right, or whenever the players feel that they're ready, you say, all right, have a discussion, try and link as many of the clues you've collected, and you've got to like put these on note cards. There's like no other way to do this.
Right.
And try and link as many of these clues as you can. Present me a theory and the difference between the number of clues you've used in your theory and the difficulty I've given you at the beginning of the adventure is the bonus or penalty you get to this roll. And it's the same results as before. Like if you roll 12 plus, you solve the mystery, easy peasy, and reveal something about the deeper, dark Cthulhu mystery. But if you roll a success with consequences, you got it right, but maybe you got one important thing wrong, like the motive of the culprit.
Or the bad guy gets away.
Or the bad guy is about to get away. You still have a chance to tackle them, but it might require a sacrifice.
Dangerous. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Someone might get really hurt. Or, if you fail, you get it wrong, but that can still be fun.
I watched an actual play of this, but Matt, I'm really curious to hear how your theorize sessions went, because
so this is very tricky.
I think it's great. And I guess if you tell your players at the beginning of the session,
you have to tell them this.
Then they can't be mad at the end. But I am imagining that there might be some frustration or dissatisfaction. But so how did your theorize session or theorize moves go?
You're absolutely right. It's not going to work unless you tell them at the beginning and they know where this is headed and that they're going to have to come up with a theory. It also helps them decide where to investigate. If one player thinks the traitorous TV producer did it, then they're going to go find more clues that they feel like could link to that person. So I've had one really good theorized move and one that went a little poorly. I think if I vaguely describe the one that went poorly, it will help you understand what some of the pitfalls are.
Okay.
I didn't, for this one, preface the theorize with, why don't we all go around the table and everyone list their top one or two kind of theories. You don't have to explain in detail, but let's all go around. And because of that, one or two players had really strong opinions before anyone else had a chance to speak. A bunch of people were on board with that theory, and then one person wasn't. The other mistake I made with the one that went poorly is I let one player start organizing the clues while everyone else went to go get another glass of wine or a cup of tea. I serve tea at all my Brindlewood Bay games. It helps with the feel. And then there was after that one person had organized the cards, it's it's tough to think about this in a different way. And then some people weren't following this. I would say the advice in the book, have a freewheeling discussion, is only half right. You need to not just say, have a freewheeling discussion. Say, why don't we go around the table, everyone share their top one or two ideas. It's okay if you don't have one. And then let's all come over to the end of the table or all go to the screen on our Roll20 where the clues are displayed and look at them together.
That makes sense. This really does depend on your group. If there's discord in the group, then there's likely to not be a clear and easy consensus. So you do, I can see why you would need to provide some guidance before just setting them loose on the clues.
That being said, having the argument, right? Once they got past the logistics of wait, I don't know what all the clues are, right? And I do, and got into, I think this person did it versus I think this person did it. When I reminded them, and this is a great place for you to jump in as the DM and be hey, okay, so it sounds like we have two competing theories. Let's, in character, right? This is the fun part of the game. Argue about who did it. And then they're oh yeah, actually, this is fun because we get to have a fake argument that has no stakes, right? Just our personal feelings. And okay, perfect. This is also a reminder to again, you got to make sure they're normal mystery solving brains of where did I leave my keys? Or who took my lunch from the workroom fridge? You have to lay that at the door, right? A couple times players got sidetracked and were well, all right, this makes sense. We just got to go talk to this one person again. I'm no, you don't. No, you can't do that, right? You're at the point where you get to ascribe to them the motive. And if you roll correctly, we will have that conversation where they confirm what you said. If you fail, they will deny, I will deny what you said.
I want to talk about this some more, but I think we should try to cover a couple of the remaining mechanics. And since we're also going to try to talk about another Brindlewood Bay game, I want to cover that. But let's talk about crowns, and then let's talk about maven moves, because these are the two remaining mechanics that are, because everything everything we've described, that's the game.
That's it.
You have it there, but there's a couple of things that make it interesting. The crowns are really cool, and I like them a lot. And then the Maven mechanics are a delight.
So you've got good crowns and bad crowns, right?
Yes.
And crowns are basically like your extended health pool, for lack of a better word. They're things you can use to have flashbacks or cut scenes that can help you deny any negative consequence the GM can give, which means that you can be like, a guy comes in to the yacht where the murder happened and pulls a gun and fires, and you're like, oh shit, I make a roll to dodge, I fail, okay, you get shot. And then they can be like, wait a second, backtrack, I'm not ready for my character to die yet, I'm gonna burn one of my crowns, right? Then there are also creepy crowns, which turn you into a Cthulhu exposure person. Yeah,
there's the crown of the queen, the good crown. I love this because this is such a trope of television, but it's, this is, and you're encouraged as the keeper, as the GM, to describe what happens to your murder maven. Oh no, somebody has sabotaged the brakes on Mabel's 67 MG, and it goes flying over the cliff and she plummets to her death. And then Mabel will say, actually, I'd like to put on the crown of the queen. And then you'll sort of be like, actually, she grabbed onto a root at the very last minute and she's fine, or she manages to pull off to the side. But you describe the horrible thing that happens, and then sort of do a retcon. And I think this is fun. I think this is a really neat narrative device.
This is helping solve the tension of how do you have stakes and high stakes that your players care about in a cozy game.
And advice we give, or advice that is often given, I don't really give this advice, but in other TTRPGs, to kill a player from time to time so they know that it's the real deal. And I don't agree with this advice, but if you want your players to feel like there's real stakes,
this lets you do that. Yeah.
Yes, this lets you kill a player without killing a player, right? And then they know that when they run out of crowns, something bad might happen.
And then other moves, specifically, I believe the occult move and some of the consequences from the overarching mystery, will require players to take on the Crown of the Void, which, unlike the Crown of the Queen, is not like you get to pick from a list of what you want to do to avoid this consequence. It's a series of escalating bad things.
You slowly become more and more attuned to the void, and some of these are beneficial, or not entirely bad, but once you have marked all of these boxes on the Crown of the Void, your maven succumbs to the void, and you have to narrate how that happens, and they retire. And by retire, probably go mad or die or both.
Yeah, you'll get to decide how they retire. But this is one of the ways your character can die, right? There are many ways your character could die in Brindlewood Bay, not just of old age, right?
Yes, right. Increasingly unlikely of old age the more you play.
So these two add a lot of spice and let you really go hard on the murder mavens because they have a lot of tools. Murder mavens also have a cozy little place, which are just things that they've acquired that they can mark to get advantage on a roll. Again, this game, we haven't mentioned it before, has the advantage disadvantage mechanic, which is just an extra D6. It lets you take the two highest, or the opposite of that applied to the Powered by the Apocalypse framework. And then we get to basically everyone starts the game with a special ability, a feat. It's called a Maven move.
These are really great. Each of these is named after a fictional detective, ranging from Frank Columbo to Dale Cooper to Father Brown to Philip Marlowe,
Fox Mulder,
Phoenix Wright, Hercule Poirot, and each of these has an ability that is sort of related to that fictional mystery solver. You might choose these just for the mechanical benefits, or you might choose them because you like the person involved. Remington Steele is on there.
Yeah, like the Remington Steele move lets you pass yourself off as someone you're not, just like said character Remington Steele. The Michael Knight move gives you a sweet ride. Some of these are simple in that they'll just boost a stat, while others I have a character in one of my in my campaign who has the Jim Rockford move. So this one's a little annoying because before every session, I have to come up with a mysterious voicemail for Hyacinth.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are quite complex. Clarice Starling one has you have to first capture a suspect, and that suspect becomes your creepy void informant, and there's a whole like mini game associated with that. But yeah, some of them are just kind of fun. I like the Robert Langdon one a lot. That's the guy from the Dan Brown novels where you change a physical object from a clue into a void clue by describing secret markings on it. Yes. And then you're like, this map has a secret insignia on the back that leads to blah 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 blah. I mean, this is great. This also illustrates the ways that like you hand off some of the narrative burden to your players, and assuming they lean into these options, that they're really really cool for giving your mavens a little bit of distinction and character of their own.
I mean, I had a player, obviously a huge Twin Peaks fan immediately. And I think this will happen at most tables. They just look at the names and they're like, I get Cooper. A power based on Dale. Yeah, you guessed it. Dale Cooper.
Yeah, Dale Cooper. No. I was like, Dale Cooper was also the first one I saw. And I was like, that's perfect. You have a weird dream and it rules.
My personal favorite is, which I only had in a one shot, not my campaign, is the Fox Mulder move, which, you have the smoking man or whatever gives you an inside to the conspiracy that's going on. Well, now that we've talked about this, I want to talk briefly before we talk about the overarching mystery to running the game. There are very few games that give you not only like a starter mystery, but essentially everything you'll need for a campaign in the book, right? And this only applies if you get the careful out there, if you get the, I think, deluxe Kickstarter edition, which is available in both beautiful hardcover and PDF, but you get enough mysteries, and there are more available at in the Nephews in Peril book.
That's right. That's right. The Nephews in Peril. Sorry, I haven't read that one yet, but I've seen it. I really want to check it out.
They're also really good. None of these miss, I have to say. None of these sample adventures miss. This is like the first game I think I bought where I'm going to have enough to do making these characters colorful and constructing as my characters play the void mystery that I don't think I need to like do that much more prep. Besides getting like materials together, organizing my thoughts and stuff like that, because each mystery is presented over 3 or 4 pages. You're given an opening scene. You're given a bunch of interesting locations. You're given a full list of NPCs who your players could be, suspects or people the players can talk to. And then a huge list of clues and void clues for each mystery. So you just got to let your players rattle around and like, prepping for a session, I just took notes on how to make these characters interesting. I took notes on where, what events I wanted to throw in and win, and then like practiced in my head the voices of the different characters and attitudes, and that's it. I would say one helpful thing as a DM is this is often an NPC heavy campaign, as in there could be somewhere between 4 and 7 NPCs in a mystery who could all be potential suspects. So having a handout for your characters with all of their pictures, what I did is I made little name tints with a picture or an image from the internet for every NPC and put it in front of the players whenever that person showed up, just so they can keep track of who's who, is very, very important.
I think this is a really interesting game to talk about after our discussion last week about Brendan Lee Mulligan and his thoughts on games precisely like this, because this is exactly, and the Between even more so, which we'll talk about in a minute, does exactly what he said he doesn't want a game to do. It kind of like tells you the story that the type of story that you're going to tell, and gives you a lot of the specific beats and emotional moments that you might have. I do think, though, that actually makes, in some ways, it easier to tell a really interesting story, because and to have an emotional connection and to, have these exciting role-playing moments, because you're given a framework for it, but you are not being told how to put that framework together, neither you or your players. And I personally like to be given a few sort of bullet points or nodes to bounce off of. And I think that this game does a really, really good job of that. I think it's really interesting how it provides you all sorts of tools for your toolbox, but doesn't tell you how to build the thing that you're building.
None of my players are going to forget, Rose trying to break into a TV star's trailer to get a clue, or laugh as hard as they described one of their grandmas being intimately familiar with the sexual practice of binding and knot tying and stuff like that. This came up in one of my games. Like, there's really hilarious moments and really funny moments, really exciting moments, and of course, many, 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 many cozy moments. And because you're focused on the NPCs and your players are focused on your characters, if your players are good at role-playing, and even if they're not, you're going to have a lot of good emotional moments. Should we talk about how the mysteries are? There's one last thing I want to bring up about how the mysteries are structured, which is whenever you get a location that your players decide to go to or not or whatever, the book has written down a question for the table. In one of the adventures, you go to a marina, and because it's summer, it's packed with tourists. In what ways are the ridiculous tourists making it difficult for you to conduct your investigation? And you go around the room, the players add to the scene, and this is perfect. In another one of my adventures, the players went into the trailer of a deeply lonely British goth man. And I said, what about this trailer tells you he's deeply lonely, deeply British, and deeply goth? And it was hilarious, right? As they describe this scene, it offloads the work from yourself. Your players are going to be naturally good at it. I love this part of how investigations are written.
And this is true of most Powered by the Apocalypse games, but this is a great way to ease your players into role-playing or into narrating or structuring the story themselves if they're not entirely comfortable with it. It gives them training wheels way. You're given everything that you need, and even somebody who's not entirely comfortable with this type of thing will usually find it pretty easy to drop into.
Stance theory. You're constantly handing off director stance to your players for brief moments, training wheel style.
And it goes without saying that some players will love this. They will they will seize the opportunity to be in the director's chair. But even the ones who are not naturally inclined, I think, will have an easy time of this. And it will make for an entirely different type of game than you might be used to playing.
The last part of the adventure is the overarching mystery, which could be in the background if you're just doing a one-shot and you'll never really get to it other than there's creepy things going on. It will eventually come to the fore pretty quickly, usually in second, third session, as your players uncover more void clues, and you're given a sheet where you get to make up the mystery as you go. You can make up your own kind of things that have happened in the past in Brindlewood Bay that point to this mystery, or you can use ones provided by the book. And the Kickstarter edition also gives you many different options for what is the secret cult, the maidens of the fragrant void who are opposing your heroes, doing in the background. What kind of creature are they summoning? What is the cult made up of? Are they insane techno bros? Are they disgruntled academics? Like, you get are they my favorite is the dispossessed royalists who are taking vengeance on the colonies. And then you get to, pick from a bunch of different lists of what your Cthulhu monster is. And these are just guidelines, like in mine, because I have a player that's really into this. The Maidens of the Fragrant Void are linked to the Kennedy assassination.
Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be?
Yeah. And so this is fun. This is for you to really write your mystery here using this framework.
You're given, like Matt described, many pieces of the dark conspiracy, many pieces of the midwives of the fragrant void, or there's also plenty of room for you to sort of decide what it is, right? There's lots of little pieces, but you can sort of put them together however you like. And I think that's fun. And it could be
this is the mystery you're writing, not the murder, this mystery.
Yes, right.
And you have so long to prep it and link things because you're doing it in between sessions or on the fly as you play, it's going to be much easier than writing a one-shot murder mystery.
And the sheet that you're given to work with this really like guides you through this. After the Mavens advance layer to layer of this darker conspiracy, it says, it gives you prompts like, what character would you like to have return? What is the child of Persephone? There's points where it's like, revise your idea about what the midwives are trying to accomplish. Like you may be able to do this stuff yourself. You may be used to just sort of like spinning mysteries, but this is such a great like guidebook to how to build the plane as you're flying it, which is what we're always doing in TTRPG land.
It is literally instructions to build a plane while flying it. Like that, having run it, I can't describe it any better than that. And I guess I will say, while this works great as a one shot, like the void clues are there for the linking material and adding a bit of dark horror to an otherwise cozy game, which is a nice contrast. Every other part of the game really, really links well together. If you don't give your maidens conditions, things fall apart. If, they don't have the opportunity to put on crowns, things fall apart, right? If they don't have their cozy place to give them advantage on rolls, they're not going to get enough clues, things fall apart. Like everything is very finely wound in my experience.
I am looking forward to an opportunity to run this as well and play in it. I have a group that I know would love this, so I'm going to give it a shot.
Before we move on, I can't speak for Rob because he hasn't played it yet, but this has my half of the Dungeon Master of None seal of approval for a game.
Oh, it has it firmly has mine for what that counts, because I have only watched an actual play or two and I have not played it yet, though we review things all the time we haven't played, so who cares? You don't care.
But we never give the seal of approval, but let's give the seal of approval to this one because this is a lot of fun.
This has been on my list for a long time. It's a lot of fun. I can immediately see how I would run this and how my players would enjoy it. Like I said, I am deeply familiar with mystery as a genre and American television mystery shows going back to, Columbo. So this is easy for me to drop into. It might not be.
Who is also a special Maven move.
This is a special Maven move. It might not be if, I don't know, your players weren't allowed to watch television as children. I'm having trouble imagining that anyone who's even vaguely familiar with American culture won't be able to get what's happening here. But I should mention that you do need to know about TV to really enjoy this fully. But that's not an obstacle. That's just a thing I should mention.
As long as you were allowed to at least watch wholesome TV, right? Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, right. Diagnosis Murder, etc. Yeah, you'll be okay.
I mean, if you were allowed to read the Hardy Boys books, then you probably
will get
right,
this.
That Nancy Drew is another one of the moves. Anyway.
This is not the only game by The Gauntlet and Jason Cordova that is carved from Brindlewood, forged in the dark, that uses the same basic system. There are a number of other of these. Public Access is one, but the one Rob and I read is The Between.
I am glad we read this. I don't know. I wish we had more time to talk about it, but I also don't. I found this really, really interesting for a couple of reasons. So just know that this is basically mechanically exactly the same as Brindlewood Bay. You have the same night moves and day moves. There are not crowns, but there are
masks,
which do the same thing. Instead of being a group of cozy mavens, you are members of Hargrave House, a collection of monster hunters that are trying to save Victorian London from a plague of deaths and occult happenings. But you perhaps are even as dark and dangerous as the things that you hunt. And where's the line drawn between hunter and hunted, Matt? Anyway, who is the monster? Dare you look upon the abyss, lest it look back upon you. Anyway, sorry, it's a little grimdark, but
Gothic Victorian horror and mystery, right? And I was like, oh, Rob, with your love of was that Savage Worlds game?
Oh yeah, the Rippers. I did love Rippers. Yeah.
I know you love Penny Dreadful.
The Brindlewood Bay is pretty explicit about its inspiration being mystery shows and Murder, She Wrote and whatnot. And this one is pretty explicit about Penny Dreadful and similar sort of like dark gothic Victorian shows being the inspiration.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen,
which I
right?
am a huge fan of. I've probably seen that terrible movie. I've probably seen that terrible movie more than most people for some reason.
Well, I hope you've read the comic.
I have read the comic. Yeah, of course I read the comic. Comic's much better. The comic's very good, actually, unlike the movie, which is just bad.
By Big Daddy Alan Moore. Now, the idea is like, oh, wait, maybe you have supernatural powers too, as you're investigating, I don't know, vampires in London. There's a number, unlike Brindlewood Bay, there are two things that really set apart besides the setting is that you have themed playbooks instead of just a single move that are much more bespoke. So you can be an American gunslinger that turns into a werewolf, or you can kind of be like a Frankenstein creator or a necromancer or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of these. And then the twist of the game is, the first rule of the Between is you're not allowed to talk about your character's backstory. The second rule of the Between is you're not allowed to talk about the character's backstory, except, of course, when the rules tell you to talk about your character's backstory. So it's really fun in that, you're all tight-lipped Victorian British repressed people who have dark pasts, and they will only slowly come out.
What I liked about this is that I thought this was very narratively ambitious and complex. Like both the writing of the book and the story you are expected to tell are quite sophisticated. I think this would be a challenging thing to run for most groups, but I think that it would be really, really interesting for the right one. Like Matt said, you have custom playbooks, and these are not, there's no fighter or rogue here, right? You're some kind of monster, and like they range from an explorer who has seen too much to a Dr. Frankenstein who is literally trying to create a creature out of parts, to sniveling servant who serves one of the other members of Hargrave House. But like the sort of things that you are expected to think about and to do, like one of the dawn questions for the factotum, this sniveling servant, is, did you subtly express sexual desire for your employer in the way you dressed them or served them? Like there's all these little dark
Smithers,
little things about like how you interact with each other in the world. And there's this element of the game, the unseen. It really like leans on heavily because it is trying to tell a story. It's trying to be Penny Dreadful, right? And the unseen is meant to be and it's the book is so explicit about this, not related to the players or the mystery that they are solving. It is just something dark and unsettling that is happening at night in London, but there's some sort of thematic resonance between the unseen and something that's happening. Like you see blood on a table and then there are blood red petals later in the night. I think this is very, very interesting. I don't think it works anywhere near as well as Brindlewood Bay, but it is a very, very strongly themed TTRPG. And I was really impressed by how it constructed sort of like the story that it wants you to tell. I would be hesitant to run this, but I think it's super neat that it exists.
It's interesting to see this system be stretched and reformulated for other things. I would love for the Between to get a deluxe refined Kickstarter edition like Brindlewood Bay received. But you really got to want, if you have a group who really, really wants not just like Victorian steampunk action, but Victorian steampunk horror, this seems like a pretty good system to run it in. I completely understand why Brindlewood Bay is the most popular of these ones. Not only because it came out first.
Yeah, it's not just that like the source material, Penny Dreadful and these and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and all this are not as popular or accessible. It is that structure of the story itself is much more challenging and much more precise. We skipped over this, but like there's a mastermind, like a Moriarty type figure it's sort of like the parallel to the midwives of the Fragrant Void. Mm-hmm. But this mastermind is orchestrating everything. And even though there's all these like I like this. This is great thing. Even all these supernatural horrors, the person behind it is just a person with pretty mundane motivations, but they are, brilliant and resourceful. And I love that. I think that's great. I think this is a super, super interesting game. And I do think that Brindlewood Bay, the system works really well for it. It is an ambitious TTRPG. Clearly this is a passion of Jason Cordova's and it shows, but this would be very fun to play for a group of deeply invested, highly motivated players, but it's not going to be easy. You're not going to be able to fall right into it the way you would with the Murder Maidens.
I think as a concluding point for the Carve from Brindlewood system is that in my experience, it has worked really well for me. The transition into it, even as someone who has run many fiction first, many Powered by the Apocalypse spinoffs in the past, was not completely smooth because it is you really, really, really have to remind your players of the open-endedness of the system, right? That the point is to have interesting character developments and interactions with one another and as characters and with NPCs, and not exactly to logically follow the clues. Though, you can still work that in. You can be like, aha, we should go to this place next. Sure, that's fine. You'll find another clue there. It'll maybe be unrelated, but you have to break your players of it's almost like the kayfabe of a murder mystery. It's like you're not Frank Columbo trying to deduce who the murderer is, right? You're whoever the guy who played Frank Columbo is, right?
Yes,
acting
right.
in a
Yes,
scene
yes.
and giving notes to the writers about who you want to stumble to next, scratch your head and puff on your cigar and say, just one more thing.
I think you really need to be familiar with and okay with the meta element of this for it to work. And I think that's not actually all that challenging, but if some players do want to have absolute flawless verisimilitude, and if you say cut to commercial, they're not going to like that because you're lampshading or breaking the fourth wall.
And then 90% of the other people will be laughing hilariously as one of your characters does an impression of Mike, the mad gorilla attorney at law. And his ridiculous TV commercials.
I think most people will like this, but I suppose it's worth mentioning that they might not. That there is a potential that it might not be the type of game that everyone wants to play. But I think it's fun. I think it's really cool. I think this was a really inspired game system that works for a lot of things. I think that if you are, it's easy to run.
Yeah, it's easy to run. It's easy to prep for. I found running it the first time a little challenging, right? But once I got over that hill, it was fine. I think, Rob, the meta conversation we should have is, or we could briefly speculate on, is I feel like my favorite Powered by the Apocalypse games are ones like this one or Blades in the Dark, where they've really, really put the effort in to make serious modifications to some of the basic ways the system works and the ways the system is GM'd. And my least favorite ones are the ones that are essentially just Apocalypse World 2E with different playbooks.
I have to agree with you. I think that the core, I don't know, no offense to Powered by the Apocalypse, but I think the core system doesn't quite have enough to interest me.
Well, I think it's fine for running Apocalypse World, right?
Yeah.
A game about, being sad and horny and angry in the Mad Max times. Very few people are interested in playing in that setting, I think.
Yeah.
But they are interested in playing in, I don't know, one of the 1,000 settings that are made for Powered by the Apocalypse games.
The great thing is that it's such a great chassis to build on. You can see the same, roots in both Blades in the Dark and Brindlewood Bay, but they're, aside from the very basic structure, they're not the same type of game at all. But it's clear that it's a really, really good framework for building interesting, highly thematic games on. And I never get tired of them.
I think what we're saying is if you're going to make a Powered by the Apocalypse game, no one should stop you, but you should go at least as far as Brindlewood Bay or Carved from Brindlewood and the Forged in the Dark games have gone from the basic system. And if you stick too close to what has already been done before, you're not going to get those specific themes and story beats that you want out of your mechanics into your game system.
So Brindlewood Bay, DM of None, seal of approval. It is cool. Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's other Powered by the Apocalypse derived games or other Carved from Brindlewood games that you'd like us to read.
And if you would like to see my Precious Moments figurines collection or get some tips about gardening in a humid subtropical zone, please drop us a line at dmofnone@gmail.com.
Add us on Twitter at dmofnone. Check out our Patreon at patreon.com/dungeonmasterofnone. Join us on our Discord. Links for all these things in the show notes. Thanks for listening, everybody, and keep rolling them dice.